Hello to everyone out there in the world. Welcome to the Patriots for Truth channel. This is a video presentation for Exopolitics 101 class presentation for the topic of to what extent is secrecy justified in dealing with visits from extraterrestrial life? Would disclosure of such visits threaten the black budget used to fund extraterrestrial related projects? Can disclosure be done in a way that it wouldn't threaten genuine national security and concerns? So I'll be looking down periodically just to get through my notes and the outline that I put together here. So let's get into it. I just gave it a little title, The Veil of Earth in Post-Atlantean Times and the Truth About Humanity and Intelligent Life in the Cosmos. We here at this channel believe that humanity was once interstellar, and the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, they were aware of this. So it's like a return to the cosmos, but it's been a long time, and there's been a veil that's created, and through the use of technology and various other methods and reasonings. So we're living in multiple economies. We believe here, with this macro economy and the general population, the GDP, the gross domestic product, and the TAM, the total addressable markets, and the supply and demand of this market economy, and the private business and ownership alongside government intervention and the regulation. That's our sort of above ground or daylight economy, if you will. That's general population. It's what you see on TV, Bloomberg, any other media outlet, etc., right? The stock market, and everything that we could see on public forum. So then there's this parallel financial ecosystem of nations, nation-states, countries. And really, if you do the research of political science, you see that each continent is basically run like a business as well as a country and state, right? Especially, with the U.S., with so many states. They each have their own little rules, alongside this parallel financial ecosystem, we have this clandestine military projects and systems that's covertly operating and shielded from public scrutiny and any standard public oversight. It greatly distorts the official economic data and mechanics. Talk about just before 9/11, it was Greenspan said 2.3 trillion was missing from the national budget, and then there's other countries, and $1 trillion is a lot of money. So where this money goes, here at this channel, we believe it's being funded underground, secret projects, and off planet as well. We think it spans that far and wide. So there's a lot to that, but there's this second economy that's operating, and that draws a lot more financing and money and just military contracts, and it just the draw is 2-3 times or greater than what we see on the regular economy of the general population. This tech and these quote unquote toys are very, very expensive. So that's where this other mismanaged money is funded and hid, and black budget, and the difference between $1 million and $1 billion is like this, but the difference between $1 billion and $1 trillion is like exponentially more. So disclosure compromises this second economy. It does. It's the classified appropriations, off the books expenses and revenues, and compartmentalized carve out contracts. They operate with code name obscurity, exemptions from from fiscal law. This is a massive enterprise, and it distorts markets. It changes, the math on all of this, and the fiscal management of the global, the real global TAM and real global GDP. Again, TAM is total addressable markets. That's any good coming and going, cost of whether it's a raw material, whether it's finished products, what it costs to transport it, the overall purchase, the end consumer, right? All of that together. The global GDP, the global TAM is much different than, what we get from these macroeconomic who's who guys, we see on TV. And there's a lot of them. So this is the real, the command economy. It's both of these, right? All of this combined. So much different from what I think we see on the media outlets, internet, TV. This second economy operates outside of the free market and standard democratic accountability. It creates, almost two societies, more than two, even if you consider, breakaway civilizations, right? There's people in the know, your military, your unilateral corporations, they're aware and, can move money in and out of this without public oversight. And then, there's these other, a lot of people believe there's a lot of evidence to support there's breakaway civilizations that are operating independently that, benefit and money is funneled through and operate through this second economy. So let's just, for a minute consider humanity is not young, and if we are millions of years old, with many advanced, even interplanetary galactic civilizations coming and going, rising and falling, let's assume the government and the unilateral mega corporations are a unit and are connected to these previous civilizations. Often they would have to relocate due to catastrophic events, whether that's pole shifts or whether that's just some sort of planetary bomb, right? These factions go to war and they wind up blowing each other up and ruining the surface of the planet, or even greater, like we see in some of these sci-fi movies. So I think if they don't completely destroy the planet, but maybe for certain reasons of protection and longevity, they would either leave planet, right, have ships that they can house a civilization, go to an alternate dimension. I think that's a possibility, a pocket reality, or a cloaked ship that's within a certain celestial body's atmosphere. So these are all food for thought possibilities. I'm not saying anything is for sure here, but we're just sort of considering all this information, and we're tie it all back into our question for the class. So this does pose the question that does secrecy remain justified if secretly it no longer exists? In other words, the question is no longer whether secrecy exists, but does it remain justified? So what if interplanetary capabilities already exist? That would, civilizations already exist inside, beneath the surface, military bases, previous civilizations, Agartha, Inner Earth. Society currently functions, on the surface at least, the general pop. It's a carefully managed system under informational architecture, right? Where there's these groups, these corporations, the military, the MIC, these unilateral corporations. They're kind of in the know, right? But majority of the population hasn't a clue. So that's this duality there, economically, information-wise as well, access to, right? If this were true, would secrecy protect or would it imprison us? Would it imprison that general population? While the groups in the know would have access to information and economics that the general pop wouldn't. So would this total and non-structured calculated disclosure, would it have this grand negative impact of antiquated life and technology? Would it break the paradigm and effects on our current society? It might. I would assume so if it was released too much too soon. So this technology, it really is strategic power, right? It's like having an upper hand on somebody or something that doesn't know. We could see how there's plenty of examples of something like that. Whether it's a weapon or information, how they could use it as an advantage. But energy systems, gravity manipulation, advanced propulsion, biological enhancements, material sciences. If all this was released at once, this could collapse a society. So, in that sense, secrecy might be justified, right? It's like, how many groups are involved in this, and is it does one group have say, to release this information, right? There could be a lot of chefs in the kitchen here that would have to agree. So secrecy might be justified in certain scenarios and situations, depending on what's sort of behind it all. And I do believe civilization is more fragile than we think, or no, based on accounts of previous civilizations that were intelligent and advanced and collapsed as well. So there were things to consider. Religious collapse, economic instability, collapse of historical narratives, psychological consequences of humanity not being the dominant ones. Right? I think if we just put that on full blast, full reveal on the news tomorrow, I don't know that would be a wise move. Break the paradigm of the societal paradigm. So, question: can the media and the controlled narrative admit? And what would happen if government admits decades or centuries even of deception and involvement? What would be the repercussions of that? Disclosure is more than just a data dump of information. It's military, it's economic, health and wellness, proliferation of all these different sections and departments. It could have certain catastrophic or perverse events. Rival nations can weaponize and launch sophisticated attacks with more advanced technologies. Criminals can get access, and control and pose a greater threat with this more advanced technology. Global power and structures could destabilize. Pandemonium could quickly set in. Breakaway civilizations can form. Maybe in some people's beliefs they already have. People can leave planets and advance individually, creating a lot of problems unforeseen. There's a lot of possibilities and evidence to support that some of this stuff might have already happened, and maybe this is somewhat of a cleanup, trying to recourse on some of that. Secrecy may be contractual, military agreements, It may involve, interspecies and treaties from other multiple advanced, either terrestrials or extraterrestrial groups, maybe groups that have been here, that have preserved their societies, that surpass our modern system, and then maybe other groups that have come and gone in the meantime, in the midst of that. So territories and locations and agreements, resource sharing, certain non-interference agreements. Again, it may be protecting a modern construct if too much was released all at once, because contractually, a more advanced species can do what they want. They can sort of have their way, kind of like, playing a sport with a an elementary schooler. You could, sort of cheat and just dominate. If multiple civilizations do coexist, does humanity or one group have unilateral authority to reveal, to admit disclosure? Right? Maybe it's not up to one group. Well, and you hear certain folks, well, why don't they just, they could just, I don't know if it's up to one, group or society or country, government to just say, all right, well, we're going to just, it has to be some sort of collective decision, I would venture to say. Just to pose a bit of a counter argument here, and just again, some food for thought, and this has got a lot of layers to it. So the why and the how. So does secrecy become dangerous, and is it a threat eventually? If things go too far and get out of hand, breakaway civilizations get so far ahead of the general population, black budget becomes self-serving, and power concentrates outside of the public oversight. And again, an adult playing a sport with an elementary schooler, they could really do what they want. The secret programs, they become unaccounted for, and they can get so far out of hand. I think it's called auto-cannibalism. It emulates and consumes its source, it overthrows and devours its own origins, right? If after World War II, we sort of, this amalgamation of forces comes together. That's maybe some of the early grouping of this power structure, and eventually here we are 80 years later, and now it's surpassed the population, and it could consume it. Yeah, it could destroy its origin. So there's many examples of this, from history, the French Revolution, the Roman Empire, the Cold War. But I think most important to mention would be the Manhattan Project and secrecy of science and espionage. And how, just after the war, this A-bomb drop, also this redefined atomic physics and global governance long after the war, weapons and its inception, ultimately leading to the Nuremberg trials and sort of this adoption of all the tech and info that was going on at the height of the Third Reich. So it sort of integrated and got folded in. Some conclude it was, the catapulting event of the Western veil and secret black budget, the end of the World War II there, and some of those New Schwaben and paperclip projects, and it sort of allowed the programs on the grand scale that we're still sort of dealing with and kind of what we're unpacking now. So there's many complementary events and tightly woven issues that were woven together and all occurring at the same time, and ultimately lead to some of the issues that we have now. I think that was the proliferation of all that is from that time. Permanent secrecy leads to democratic collapse. So it's sort of a catch-22, right? If we release too much at once, it's a problem. If it's a complete secrecy for too long of a time, it leads to catastrophic events as well. So, at what point does protecting secrecy and civilization become ruling over it? And what if this was the point from the early stages, from the time of kings and queens, to the use of advanced technology? What if it's always been about hegemony and control for personal, that select few, people in the know, their personal gain. So if that was the sort of goal, then I would say it's been pretty effective, throughout the course of time. Truth success suppression assists in the collapse of assists in this collapse and creates instability. Corporations and military leaks, conspiracy and the allure of institutional distrust, and in the population and in the society, and in fragment society. If there's total secrecy, eventually these things start to groundswell, and so the eventual collapse from the underbelly, as well as from top-down secrecy, you get this kind of issue from underneath, but also above. And it's said people tolerate difficult truths better than permanent manipulation. Sun Tzu, George Orwell, Eisenhower on Cost of Deceit, and Thomas Jefferson informed on Consent and Tyranny, all saying that too much or too little of this is poses a problem over a long term. So humanity's society cannot progress and mature if we're treated as children and not given the information. Science, and the quantum mechanics, and they say there's elements missing from the periodic table, and certain elements that could help humanity progress. Spiritual and soul mechanics, right? I would assume secret society and certain groups know a bit more about the soul and where we come from. And in this class we've covered a lot of really good topics that indicate there's more to consciousness, and it operates outside of the brain, and obviously technologically, right? With this technology we can progress a society, could advance humanity. So it creates psychological dependency, the secrecy. The civilization is essentially kept in an adolescence phase. Moral and ethical responsibility should be part of the controlling factors to keep a civilization at a certain progressed level, in a state of progression. And so are we seeing that? And let's consider if society is already participating in breakaway civilizations with greater, more advanced tech, that indefinitely prevents humanity from evolving if it's kept a secret and only a limited hangout, right? It's only allowed for the select few. And I here at this channel, we don't believe total release. It doesn't need to take place, to assist with evolution of society, right? There's ways to integrate this stuff and sort of do it safely. And if the MIC, if the military industrial complex, your unilateral corporations and governments, and sort of the World Economic Forum, the NATO, the UN, the groups, the G Summit, they're sort of all this one unit, one kind of like an octopus, this entire conglomerate. It's like a consortium, multi-international syndicate. It's an aggregate, a medley of multifaceted entities with all distinct moving parts, but ultimately at some level will work together, and are in business and integrated. And if some of this stuff is true, they're operating at multiple levels with many different advanced groups and beings and entities and other civilizations of intelligent species, alternative to humans. Would full disclosure put them, these different groups, at risk? And these projects, groups that are supported by the black budget. So that's something to consider. It's I don't think it's just a selfish, well, let's just disclose and give humanity what's been kept secret, and forget the adverse effects. I think there's a lot of groups that would have to deal with some negative repercussions from that. So society, the government would demand. The people would demand that the government would want to have oversight. So if they came out and said, like, hey, we have contact, and we've been working with advanced terrestrials or extraterrestrials, but we're not in control of it. Like, you couldn't say that, right? You couldn't tell the population that. You have to be like, no, we're in control of it. It's it's organized, and we have this sort of under wraps. It's an organized agreement of sorts, right? If you said sort of, we don't know which way it's going, and it would cause mass panic. So that's something that, as disclosure does come out, they're going to have to show this sort of credible control of it. We can't just say, hey, we have contact and we're not in control. It caused public mass hysteria, public chaos. All the hidden contracts and contractors, the money that draws, the hidden expenses, the illegal activities and experiments, lots of which would ultimately become public. I don't know if that's what we're aiming for here with disclosure. I think we want to sort of sister build, like construction. If there's a building that has good bones, the structurally it's sound, but maybe you got to get it back down to studs. They call it sister building, where you rehab it without knocking down the entire building, without knocking down the entire system. I don't think we want to destroy the entire system with disclosure here. I think we want to sort of tie in and re-architect a new structure. So is it possible to do that, and would that strengthen humanity? Would disclosure help strengthen, or is there a way that it possibly could strengthen society? And I think in certain, if rolled out properly, it could. With public funding could be made available, legitimacy in institutions could emerge, just legitimacy overall, with some of this mismanagement of federal money, and clean up things like the environment, socially, economically. We wouldn't be so strapped in our economics, and it could open research, and it could accelerate progress for humanity. Costs could distribute across society. Much more accurate and accountability, fair market economy could emerge as a result of disclosure. If it's structured and executed properly. So, does this secrecy on one hand protect a society from more advanced nefarious groups? That could have their way with a less advanced population, or is it protecting the organizations that sort of built it? There's several layers to this situation in terms of secrecy and in terms of release of the info. The whys and the hows both are very multi-layered. In a dynamic issue, often it requires dynamic solutions in order to achieve preservation. If not, it's fire up the Death Star, right? Just destroy, wipe the whole slate clean, like in the sci-fi movies. They just wreck the celestial body. I don't think that's a viable solution here, right? So how do we integrate with this surface population, with this second economy and this all the technology and everything and science that's behind it? So let's see. I'm trying to keep this under an hour. See if I can get a time on. So yeah, can disclosure preserve national security? We believe here at Patriot for Truth, that it could, if done, executed properly. We believe you have to have a structured release or timeline to integrate safely with information, with the technology, with biohealth, and with economics. There's. I don't think you want to give everybody UBI just all of a sudden. There's a lot of stories of people mismanaging money. The 18-year-old kid with $1 million in the Ferrari, and in a couple of years the Ferrari's gone. He's broke and destitute. I don't know that we want to just with the med beds and things like that as well. I don't think we want to just start healing people back to the age of 21, and there's the William Tompkins testimony where he says that there's certain military technology that can do stuff like that, and as soon as, in most cases, as soon as they brought the cadet back to full health at a young age, he went out and started drinking and went off on a bender of sorts, and I think this with great power comes great responsibility, right? So as we progress humanity with this new tech, with this biohealth stuff, with the loosening of economics and not being so strapped with the cost of living and high taxes, I think we want to show people how to live more resiliently and how to live more wholesomely as well, for the spirit, and for the sake of future society, humanity becoming interstellar. There's responsibility that comes with all of that, on the overall reveal and release of this information. So with the Rockwell Integrated Space Plan, they demonstrate some of this, that there's this timeline, and there's this calculated release of information and technologies. Rockwell Rockwell International is an aerospace and defense company, and it was bought by Boeing in December of 1996, and it was engulfed and folded into Boeing for I think $3 billion in 1996. So you could almost 3x that the value of what $3 billion was in the 90s to what it is now. So you could see that there was some a lot behind it. What is in the Rockwell International Aerospace and Defense? Well, it's a aerospace defense program with multiple silos. It's hardware, satellites, crafts, fighting ships and jets and facilities, as well as the manufacturing of those, and the hardware to store all the information, but also the automation side of it, the software to make all that function, but also the avionics and all the small parts that go together to build this sort of stuff and make it function properly. So there's a lot there, and obviously Boeing speaks for itself. And this space plan, this map has been updated several times that I've come across. Having got an early version I think from a Frank Chili podcast that I listened to. If you guys know who Frank Chili is, he's he's a graybeard for sure. So at the end of the podcast, he said, "Hey, this is my email. If you want a copy of this map, email me." And that's a while back now. But so I've seen several updates since then, and I had gotten it printed out and I put it up on the wall, and it seems like we've been, that's a dated version that I came across, but it seems like we've been hitting the major marks, the major timelines, and it shows, it demonstrates that it's all scheduled to happen in phases. Phase 1 being, admit non-human intelligence and contact. And integrate slowly the technology, the locations, and the capabilities of the military, and some of this stuff. And then this timeline reveal of major events and institutional structures, while protection is maintained of sensitive assets and strategic infrastructure. Then phase 3 would be this controlled integration and introduce public scientific information and cultural adaptation to this, all this, what's behind the curtain, if you will, and all this, and create international governance of it all. And so, on the map, it states that, the goal is to move towards, from secret custody towards managed participation. How do we do that safely? I think that's the million-dollar question here. But ultimately, we do believe both arguments are true. If disclosure is done, it must be calculated. Too quick of a release and it would collapse society, but total secrecy eventually will also. So again, it's a bit of a catch-22. So just a little, closing thoughts here that I put together. If humanity already shares Earth with civilizations older than recorded history, secrecy may have been necessary, but every secret system faces a choice: evolve and become transparent, or become the threat it was created to protect. The real question is not whether humanity is ready for disclosure, but if the secrecy systems are ready to reveal what's been kept secret and what we're truly capable of doing and becoming as a species. Are the systems ready for that, to admit that? Because a lot is moving quickly. I believe we're half a century away from this singularity, right? And singularity being this connection of automation, of AI, that's sort of all combined, of economics, of legal, of a corporate structure. Once all of that becomes combined, we have this phase of what's been labeled as the singularity of, AI and the agentic economy. And it's all about taking energy and turning it into information. And there's a lot of companies that are saying that nuclear fusion, not fission, but fusion. Not what we use to drop the atom bomb, but fusion, which would, mostly using magnets. Not this toxic byproduct. With this half-life. So it's all about taking the energy and turning it into information. So I don't think we're dealing with a lack of energy, right? If you solve the energy crisis, a lot of these tech and a lot of these issues will take care of themselves. It's all this stuff can be integrated and be used safely if we deal with the energy crisis. And I think that nuclear fusion can assist in that and can provide the amount of energy needed. So I think, and I don't want this to get into a financial tangent. That's why I didn't really mention it. But I do think that there's certain crypto and certain digital assets that will serve as the new universal basic equity, and they'll equal, the power to compute towards intelligence. The entire financial system will move to a blockchain rail at some point. Not that we should get rid of paper money, but I do think, if these systems, this black budget and this secret economy is alive and well, they're not walking around with paper dollars and gold bullion. Like, they're already using blockchain rails and crypto digital assets to keep track of their books, right? Blockchain is different than crypto. It's not the same thing. Blockchain is a rail and a system. Crypto is and digital assets are something that sits on top of it. And so, if all of that is alive and well behind the scenes, they're already using some of this stuff. So I do think it's will be integrated. And again, that's not financial advice. Do your own research. I do have a previous video where I'm suggesting some, again, but I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research on that. Just if you are curious and you feel inclined to do so, you can check out some previous videos that I've made where I give a bit more detail on that. But the demand for intelligence is infinite. And so, that's currency to AI, is information. And so, my dad was MIO, military intelligence officer, and he would say, information is the roadmap. That's what allows us to know where and how to navigate. So you need information. I think, information is paramount. It's just how you apply it, to AI and to a civilization. It's the information, the proper math that can allow for, newer technologies and progress, the modernization of systems. It's all through information. And so that's what this sort of that's what the energy buys us, gets us. That's what it gets us. It results in information. Anyway, that's all I got for this presentation. Just want to give a shout out to the Exopolitics program. It's been really cool. It's been something that's provokes a lot of thinking and different from what we get from your regular news and media. And on top of that, I just want to say, be a mercenary for your own capital, because here at Patriots for Truth, we're not money hungry, but we also don't want to be destitute. With money, you can buy yourself freedom of time, and you can position yourself safely and properly to control your future, control the outcome. So again, be vigilant, be a mercenary for your own capital, and that's it for today.